situation where nobody wins.
Of course, Kobayashi is a very good guy. He done in life, okay.
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Venture Capital TV from La Token. So great. We have a full house today. And my name is Sunny Mohanty. I'm the host and the moderator of the panel today. And we're going to discuss about investments in startups in developing emerging markets and developing countries. That's a very interesting topic. So today I'm joined by 5 speakers: Karthik Bhatt, Giampaolo Parigi, Adrian, Kingsley, and Harsh, to discuss this topic. So what happens if you live in a small or a developing country? It is easy to think that you'll never be able to start a successful tech company. 2 major barriers you will convince yourself at that these countries lack the skilled researchers to develop breakthrough tech products and the much needed capital to get the products from concept to market. So that's the general perception everybody has when they start from a very remote place or a sort of small developing country. So let's just hear from our speakers today what they've got to share, and also learn from their experience and expertise if they have invested into startups in developing markets. So before that, I'd like to start with a short intro and background of all our speakers today who are participating in this session. I'm going to start with Karthik Bhatt from RJ Factory. Hi, Karthik. Welcome back. Welcome back on VCTV. Short and background.
This seems to be my 84th or the 85th episode with all of you, and it's been a pleasure for the last 1 year during the pandemic. I got to know a lot of you, and I think it's been an absolute pleasure. I represent a couple of family offices based in the UK, the Grindlays families from Yorkshire primarily, and I represent a venture fund based out of Saudi and Qatar. I also represent a large retail business entity that has multiple diversified businesses. My investment primarily is a lot in the Middle East and in developing countries. So I've had a first-hand flavor of understanding how a developing ecosystem varies from an ecosystem as developed or as evolved as maybe a Hong Kong or Singapore, or for that matter, even Dubai is. So yeah, I would love to be a part of this discussion.
Fantastic.
Disclaimer is that I have active investments in almost all the developing countries, especially in India and in Far East.
Wow. Great to know that. Thank you, Karthik. Next, I see on my screen is Giampaolo Parigi, who's joining the Singapore session after a while. How are you, Giampaolo? Long time no see. What's up?
Yes, welcome everyone. This is Giampaolo Parigi. Everything is fine, and happy to be also on the La Token Asia panel. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a serial entrepreneur and venture capitalist. I've been for 30 years in the industry, and I have extensive experience, I would say, of having started up several ventures in emerging markets. So I think, I could, definitely relate to what we'll discuss today, because, I've been into it from day one on many different challenges and with different co-participants in different business cycles. So very happy to be here today, and you'll hear more of me in a little while. Thank you.
Right, great to see you back, and welcome to VCTV Asia. Perfect. Next I have on my screen is Adrian from Sarah Global Ventures. Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Hi, Sonny. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm actually pretty, I would say, happy today because my non-tech days are over. Over the last 12 months, a lot of people told me that I speak like a tech guy. It was a compliment. So,
Right.
but I'm an economist. I'm a totally non-tech guy. And today I was able to deploy my first written in Solidity smart contract on Binance Smart Test Chain. So it's a big accomplishment for me. Of course, the tech people will make fun of me, but as I said, I'm Edwin Niculescu. I come from Romania. Romania is a perfect candidate for such a panel. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. My genius zones are sales, marketing, and business development. I'm involved in few projects. CloudCoin Consortium. CloudCoin is a post-blockchain digital currency. Faster Capital, a Dubai-based accelerator and incubator for startups. I'm a mentor in Richard Branson's Virgin Startups program in UK, and also involved with the UK-based venture capital firm Star Global Ventures. Very happy to be here.
Perfect economist with solid tech knowledge. Glad to have you on VCTV. Next, I have on my panel Kingsley. Hi, Kingsley. How are you?
Sonny, how you doing? I can see you've been enjoying yourself the past week. I follow you on Facebook. You're having a good time. It's good to be here again.
Thank you.
My name is Kingsley Kobayashi. I'm a serial entrepreneur, investor, the chairman of Kobayashi Group. I invest in developing countries. Focus in Africa with healthcare, food tech, agri-tech, and commercial real estate. So blockchain is the major part of my business. I've been there for about 6-7 years right now, and I'm lucky to have entered at that early stage. So it's good to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces, and it's good to see you all again.
Great, Kingsley. Good to be. It's great to see you back. Probably there's a little bit of intermittent connection here, but all good. Last but not least, on my screen, I see Harsh from Aha Ventures. Hi, Harsh. Welcome back. How are you? We just spoke yesterday. Harsh?
Hey, Sony. Glad to be back. A lot of familiar. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can.
Okay. Hi, Sony. Glad to be back. A lot of familiar faces as always. Karthik, Giampaolo, Kingsley, and Adrian. So really great to be back and have this amazing discussion. So I'm a venture partner with our ventures. We help early stage startups typically from India and other Southeast Asian countries help raise funds all the way up to $10 million. We are completely sector agnostic, be it health tech, fintech, marketing tech, doesn't matter. We are open to all sectors. I personally am also starting a Facebook group called Startup Hackers. We've received 600 members in less than 2 months. The primary focus being kind of helping the early stage startups, mentoring them at the early stages where they need the maximum amount of help, kind of scale through the initial difficulties and reach at the levels where we can work with them more hands-on. So we are seeing some good traction over there as well and trying to help Indian startups expand globally. Thank you so much.
Right. So thank you, Harsh. And again, happy to have you back on VCTV to discuss about startups in developing countries. And with your expertise and your experience, it's going to be a very engaging session, as I can see. So let's just start with this a big topic. What kind of problems really do startups face in developing typically face in developing countries? I'd like to start with Karthik. Hi, Karthik. Over to you.
So I look at it differently. Startups don't necessarily face problems in developing countries. People from the developed countries, maybe somebody like me sitting in Dubai would feel that setting up a startup in India or setting up a startup in Vietnam or Taiwan is going to be a challenge. But for somebody who lives there, is not necessarily a challenge. It's the way the ecosystem is built. A startup in a developed country necessarily is trying to create what we call as an innovation engine, a leader of the world in terms of developing artificial intelligence or developing quantum computing, big data, for that matter, even space tech. A typical startup in a developing country necessarily is working on a offshoot of that innovation. That's one. Second, trying to solve out common existential problems or common everyday problems that would accelerate the pace and create a very strong relevance in the market. They necessarily face challenges in terms of infrastructure. They face challenges in terms of talent pool. They face challenges in terms of even regulatory policies that would allow global venture investors to invest. Specifically 10 years ago, 15 years ago, India had challenges of investors like us pumping in money from different parts of the world where it had to be routed through different entities. But then over a period of time, it is more or less about an ecosystem maturing and investors starting to realize that it's not just dollars that you put into a startup in a developing country. You go in with the entire ecosystem of infrastructure, technology, work environment, and support that enables and builds the journey from an idea into a business and from a business into a success story. That's the difference that I see between a startup in developing and a developed country.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those opening remarks. Giampaolo, over to you. So as per you, what kind of problems do startups face in developing countries typically face as per you?
Yeah, yes, Sonit. I think this is a great question, and one could talk forever on this. I would like to take it from a different angle. Try to divide the startups in two large, broad categories. The startups that have been incorporated by professional investors and large multinationals, and the rest of them. Because obviously a startup is a startup, but you have to see who's behind the startup. I mean, if you put a billionaire, obviously it's not the same thing as having a startup from an unknown person. So the reality, I think, the first challenge, and that happens in every market, just to dispel the notion that startup in emerging economies should be more depressed than startups in very advanced economies. I think they all face the similar challenges, dilemmas, lack of visibility. I've been a venture capitalist for 10 years in Silicon Valley, and I can guarantee you that even in Silicon Valley, there are a myriad of startups that are invisible on our radar screens for a variety of reasons. So one can think about Africa or Latin America or other emerging areas of the world. But again, the challenges of startups more or less are the same all over the world. If you want to go a little bit more granular, of course, you have to take into the context, into the equation, the fact that a startup would also carries on its own ledger the country risk profile of its own country. Obviously, that's an element of bias. But again, and you could go, even more granular and add other elements regarding being around a major financial center or a large manufacturing hub or just in the middle of the countryside. But I think at the end of the day, the mission of the startup is what really matters, because if any entrepreneur had enough sparkle of creativity and there's a desire or executing on this creativity and to transform it into something that can become an actual service or a product for the wider communities and even for the global market, I think there's always good to be had. And I think there's no room for discouragement, because discouragement doesn't belong with entrepreneurs. Otherwise, you might as well call it a day and go to bed. But I think, enterprises are just bundles of issues, bundles of problems, bundles of challenges. And
Right.
this is valid for companies really at large cap level as well as the nano cap and micro cap scale. It's all the same. So the reality, I think, there is as a market gets more and more global, because we said many times, even here on La Token, that no company today can exist without being a technology company. And technology is a sort of a common denominator across the globe. So I think even in advanced economies, many startups are facing an entire new landscape, and they have to confront themselves with an entire new set of challenges, meaning that they really have to overcome their difficulties in not being able to become sufficiently technological, and they have to adapt very quickly to that arena. Otherwise, they're toast, their history. So I think, the challenges are really global as we move into a unified technological marketplace. And I would leave it with that at this point, and I'm curious to hear what the other fellow panelists think about that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gianpaolo, for sharing those opening remarks. And great to know that the startups outside of the developing economies also obviously have problems, but I think the startups within these developing countries have much more bigger problems, as per my sort of viewpoint. But let's hear it from Harsh, who sees more startups from India, some subcontinent, and maybe Bangladesh, Pakistan, and other countries in Asia.
Got it. So definitely the only disadvantage which I see presently is the access to technology, which is still kind of lacking. Typically in India, we would say that India is a population of 120 crores, right? But if you truly look at it, the major focus is it ends at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, where it comes down to around 20, 30 CR at best to actually have that
We lost
invest
him.
in. Can you see me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
we lost you for a second. We lost you for a second. You're back now. Yes, there. Continue.
Okay, perfect. So the biggest problem is only in terms of the reach that we have. So it comes down to around 20 to 30 crores at best. That is the entire market size which is currently right now. I think we discussed the same in yesterday's panel as well. If we kind of come up with more grassroots startups focusing on expanding that customer base from 30 CR to rest of the the smaller towns, the smaller villages, etc., bring them on board. That could be one. You can certainly just expand the market and the potential customers which are there, that you can then have a much wider base of customers. That is the first challenge. The second challenge is the acceptability, right? So Bangalore is kind of like the Silicon Valley of India. The amount of
Yeah.
opportunities which Bangalore has, it's absolutely amazing. The startup ecosystem is amazing, and unfortunately, for the last 10 years, the other ecosystems haven't kind of kept up with the way Bangalore has kept growing, right? So if you look at the Mumbai ecosystem, the Pune ecosystem, the Delhi, Gurgaon ecosystem, it is improving, but it's still not at Delhi's level. So we need to be much more open and much more transparent. And primarily, it comes down from the accelerators and the VCs. They have to be much more approachable because they play a lead role in bringing the startup ecosystem, right? The founders by themselves, there's only so much that they can do. But then it's the incubators, the accelerators, the VCs, when they start interacting with a lot of these startups at the ground level, that is when the true innovation happens. There was this book which I came across, creating a startup city or something of that sort, where the concept was to create a startup kind of a startup environment in a completely new city, and kind of creating an entire ecosystem of where startups can then thrive and create new opportunities for everyone, right? It was written by the same author who has written the book on venture capitals, how you can kind of how you can be smarter than your own venture capitalist for a startup founder. And he's created his own ecosystem in Denver, Colorado. Now, Colorado is not something you would associate as a VC, Silicon Valley city. But this VC, after his stint in Silicon Valley, he moved to Denver and he created this amazing ecosystem over there of amazing startups over there. So that is exactly what we need to allude to, and create those kind of ecosystems where people can be much more open, and there's much more open, transparent sharing of knowledge, as well as being open to take some risky investments as well. So by and large, these are some of the major things which we can look at.
Great points there, Harsh. Great points. Thank you so much for sharing those opening remarks. Next, I would like to ask Kingsley. Kingsley, having lived in Tokyo and also working with the startup ecosystem in Nigeria, uh, uh, what kind of differences do you see in terms of challenges faced
Yeah.
by those startups?
Thank you very much, Sonny. As someone who started his first company in the early 90s in Nigeria, Hurricanes International. Yes, startup in developing countries may be very difficult. But at the same time, if you are doing a startup in Africa or Southeast Asia, you should look at doing something that is relative to your community, to your society. Now, most problems that are faced in developing countries are political. The government can change tomorrow and they change the rules. Number two is security. The security situation in most developing countries, they are very difficult. Number three is how do you get your money out? So these are the primary things that startups think about when, I mean, people coming into developing countries should think about when investing in developing countries. But for those who are there, for those who live there and they want to start startups, they have more opportunities than those of us who started in the early 90s. Because now you have Google, you have Safari, you have every search engine that you can use to educate yourself on what's going on around the world. You can learn. But at that time, you had no choice. You just have to start your business and hope that it goes well. Now, another thing that they should be thinking of doing is collaborating. Blockchain has made it possible for you to collaborate with anybody, anywhere in the world. The world is a small village thanks to blockchain. So, though there are still hindrances in infrastructure, for example, in most developing countries, the infrastructure is not there to do it. But I do believe that if you have a good idea, you have a good project, you will be able to collaborate with people outside your region to invest in that project as long as they have the assurance of exit strategy, how to get their money out. So that is just my opening statement.
Great points there, Kingsley, coming from you as well. Thank you so much for sharing that. Last, we have Adrian. Adrian, your views about this.
My main idea I would like to transmit is that usually people need passports, but businesses don't. So when you have some limitations which are related to the fact that, let's say, you are in a developing country, you are in the middle of a war, or you are in the middle of a political turmoil, if you have a roof over your head, if you have access to a good internet, and I don't know what to eat and how to pay your internet bill, you have access to most of the knowledge you need, and you can always find a co-founder, which could be in let's say in US or in UK. There are so many platforms to find a co-founder. If you have any limitations regarding something, starting something, you need to figure out as a founder, as an idea creator, which are your strengths, and to partner with some other people who have different strengths and who can complement you. And most of those limitations, you will see that were generated by your mind. They are not something which can't be overcome. So it's very important to work on your mindset and to think, okay, I don't have this, I don't have that. Who can help me supplying that, and to come into my idea, so to build something great and to remove these freaking limitations. Actually, in the developing countries, there is a lot of space to do things, because most of the things from the already developed countries are not there. You can develop in in a a greenfield way. And I always want to use not as an example of a country which is not developed by. How can Dubai build on play sand something which nobody else can do? Because
Right.
and I like to use the example of Dubai is one of the markets I'm active along with US and UK, and I find Dubai to be the most progressive place on earth. So on sand they build everything, including snow, skyscrapers, everything. A lot of infrastructure on in a medium which was not friendly. So when you are thinking about limitations, okay, think about, okay, how the Dubai leaders did it, or how would Richard Branson proceed, or what would Donald Trump do, or any leader in such things, and you will gather more ideas. If you say, okay, I'm not in a position to do anything, you are in a very bad spot. So this is my advice. Overcome
Right.
limitations.
Overcome limitations of being in a developing country. Great points there, Adrian, and great points for Dubai as well. I mean, I love Dubai. I've been there many times, like till last year, like every month I was literally there, and Karthik lives there. So yeah, great. Talking about I just want to know the key growth sectors in developing markets, because yesterday Harsh told yesterday we had a panel on India rising, like the opportunities in India, and he mentioned about a startup they have invested who obviously garages, offline garages, like the car servicing, the vehicle servicing center is most offline, like one of the most business which was not digitally, no digital, nothing in the space, but they've just started moving into a CRM system they moved into a CRM system during the pandemic. So because obviously, as somebody said, I think Adrian said, the kind of scope that we have in developing countries is totally different from a developed country. A Silicon Valley, even a Silicon Valley and a Bangalore, the opportunities will be totally different. So we'd like to know what are the key growth sectors in developing markets and the investment trends which follows that. Karthik? Karthik, you there? I think Karthik is
I
sorry, Karthik
think
is
he's frozen.
yeah. I thought he was watching me. Sorry, it's frozen on me. John Paulo, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I'll take it from here as the connection with Karthik we established. Well, I think the baseline element for investments in any country is always infrastructure, because like some of the fellow panelists pointed out a few minutes ago, if you don't have the infrastructure, you cannot do anything. So infrastructure, and I've been an infrastructure investor for a long time. So I think this is really like a no-brainer. It's where most of the initial effort should go, even into a frontier country. Because if you don't have an airport to land into, how do you reach the country to begin and evaluate investments? You know, I make it very simple, and it's just an example. Or if you don't have a port to offload your cargo or to upload your cargo from the country, whether it is commodities or finished products, you can't do business. So the reality is it's very important to have infrastructure. The second, I would say, is technology, and I would take it just as brutal as it is. Technology now, it's an all-invasive and permeating. It's an all-invasive concept permeating every sector of our business life, whether it is agriculture or manufacturing or services. And again, coming back to some of the obstacles that companies may face is, of course, every country has a rule of law, obviously we know that, but the different degrees of enforcement of the rule of law is what makes the difference when it comes to investors, and startups, obviously, because the relative perceived slowness of, for example, the judicial system, of the so-called justice, in certain countries versus other, may dictate whether some startups may actually evolve or fail. If you think what happened with China for, more than 2 decades, in which, in terms of the protection of intellectual property, of foreign intellectual property, there have been a huge resistance to the adoption of preventative measures for the against the stealing of the intellectual property of foreigners. And now, in the last years, China has become to be a little bit more responsive on that item, which has benefited its own economy, because, of course, more and more technology companies have been induced to do more business with China. I mean, this is an example. India, like I say India, but I could use Italy, even in the Western world, where the judicial system is quite slow, and the process, the unraveling time of trial cases, it's very lengthy. You may stay into the tunnel for as long as 10 years or more. Obviously, this is a disadvantage for the economy, for the growth, and the entities that are more at a disadvantage in a disadvantaged economy are the smaller entities, obviously, and the younger entities, because like we say, under COVID, the people who are suffering most are our children, because basically this lockdowns is stealing away a portion of their childhood. I mean, it has an impact on the children, which is much greater than the impact that it has on adults. It's the same for the economy. A startup would suffer at a different level and with a greater magnitude compared to what a multinational would suffer in a state where the justice is low or where the infrastructure is not developed. So obviously, you have to put all these things into the context. But the beautiful, I would say, sunny side is that unless you're in agriculture and in some portions of manufacturing, any other business could be developed also, like Adrian said a few minutes ago, thanks to connections with different types of networks, and you could work together with partners that are situated in different parts of the world. You can utilize suppliers that are situated in different parts of the world, and you will have ultimately clients that are anywhere in the world. So even if you are in country X, as I say, you could, with services, you can deliver and supply your intellectual product just around the world, ship it around the world intangibly very quickly, just because we are now organized in those sets of networks that work very efficiently, even in moments of difficulty like the pandemic. So I think, there's a lot of good to be had for startups that want to and have the stamina and the desire to grow. I think it's a very, very nice, exciting moment for them to come to the market today, even versus only 10 years ago. I mean, with all the difficulties of the market today, I think technology allows us to have a cheaper access to internet, faster access to internet, the possibility of transferring large amount of data basically for free in virtually no time at all. And again, we can be on conference calls like this forever at a fraction of the cost that we would have faced or incurred even only 10 years ago. So I think there's we have to look at it with optimism and with a realism. There's a huge potential market for many companies around the world. And this is good because it brings together with itself the concept of financial inclusion. Really, we are the first collective generation that has the possibility of really adopting financial inclusion. And so we can get out of this atmosphere of buzzword that was only heard and echoed in the halls of the United Nations, and we can now really begin and transfer this into everyday's life, even in the smallest of communities in the middle of Africa or Latin America. It's really good. I think it really gives people not only hope, but a good possibility to create sustainable sources of revenue generation, income stream, and profit sharing. So I think it's all for good. And the sky's the limit.
Sure. Thank you, Gianpaolo, for great insights over there. Karthik, actually, I was asking you when you froze. So obviously the growth sectors and the trends, investment trends for a developing country and Silicon Valley is going to be totally different, or any other country which fosters more startup ecosystem. So what are the key growth sectors and investment trends for developing countries, or the sectors where startups are coming up, as per you?
Yeah. So if you see a typical economic structure of a developing country, the core economy or the real economy is something that is owned by large enterprises or large established businesses. Let's say, take an example of Reliance in India or the Adanis in India. They handle the core infrastructure. Startup growth in core infrastructure is either governed by the government or by large businesses, which necessarily leaves the bottom of the pyramid for startups to grow, which primarily is the technology, the healthcare, the education space, civic reform space, innovation in communications, innovation in media. I see a lot of startup primarily in the subcontinent and in Far East, where we have a lot of investments.
He's gone again. Karthik, can you hear us? I think he's gone again. Hush, would you like to take this question? Karthik, sorry, he's back. Yeah. Karthik, are you back?
I'm so sorry. The Middle East has a little bit of a challenge on StreamYard, and despite me taking exemptions, it blocks me. But nevertheless, I think, we see investments wherever I am invested, primarily in Far East and South is a lot in the edutech space, lot in the healthcare space, lot in the financial instruments and negotiable instruments space. A lot of changes are coming in media and media consumption habits. A lot of investments are coming in the new economy, which is where dollars are coming. But the challenges that we continue to see are still growing primarily because of the confidence of the venture investors. Typically, a VC fund like me, let's say, based out of the Middle East, has a lot of expectations from a startup in terms of its readiness, in terms of how polished the idea is, how evolved the entire process is, how much infrastructure, team, and ecosystem does the startup come in with, which is where the marriage more often than not is not happening. And that is where funding is coming in from the native or the friends and family sectors, and fueling startups still in I would say developing nations. One of the key changes that we have started seeing, which primarily is only seen in the developing economies, is a lot of social startups that have started coming in, which primarily boost the social ecosystems, which not necessarily for profit, but to bring in an overall growth around in the social structures. So that's where we are invested. In terms of where we are invested, we did a very strong project with an African nation, and now replicating that in one of the Far East nations is building in a e-commerce portal for a second hands or pre-used merchandise, primarily in the electronics, in the clothes, in luxury fashion, and in certain consumer space. When we started the project in one of the African nations, an investment of 2 million, we have seen already around 800,000 to 900,000 transactions in a period of 1.5 years. We're trying to replicate that in Myanmar, in Philippines, in Taiwan, in Indonesia, with a partnership with Zalora, which is a very large e-commerce platform based out of Southeast, and trying to see if that succeeds. If that succeeds, we would replicate it in India as well.
Great use cases, I would say, Karthik, because my question was key growth sectors and investment trends for developing countries, which is obviously different from our developed nation, because the opportunities and the challenges are different. So
the sectors might not differ, Sony. The sectors would more or less be the same. The level of innovation and the ladder of innovation would differ. So while a subcontinent startup or a developing country startup in health tech would work on imaging and would work on cyber medicine, a startup in an evolved geography would be working on robotics and artificial intelligence for health tech. So the sector would more or less be the same. The trend in the pivot in terms of what is the innovation that they are working is at the bottom of the pyramid.
Right. Yeah. Got it. Thank you, Karthik. Harsh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. Can you tell me the question again, please? I kind of lost you there for a second.
So, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
The key growth sectors and in the developing countries, which are the key growth sectors, and what are the investment trends?
Got it. So Karthik is pretty much bang on, as in terms of the sectors. You look at it, whether it be US, UK, or India, the sectors are more or less the same. It's healthcare, fintech, marketing tech, same old conventional sectors there which are prominent over there. The same is true for India as well. It only comes down to the kind of degree of innovation and what's the nuances which are there, right? I'll give you a specific example in terms of e-commerce. So what has happened typically in e-commerce in US is there hasn't been too much innovation in terms of e-commerce, right? The Amazon model, you have a website, people start selling it. That's the same model which is kind of going on for the last 30 years. Everyone's kind of doing the same thing, whether it be single brand or multi-brand e-commerce players, right? In India, we've seen some very innovative thing happening through the coming of Meesho and Shop 101. What they've done is they've taken social commerce, and in social commerce they've taken it to a whole new level in terms of now these big e-commerce players. What they do is they list hundreds of products on the platform, and then it's up to the people, the channel partners who are listed on the platform, for them to resell it to the end customers. So that is a completely new take on e-commerce, and it's been working phenomenally well. They are doing like 500 million revenues. These numbers are around 6 months past. I don't know the latest numbers, but 6 months back they have done phenomenally well. They're doing 500 million of revenues of sales to the platform, and they're enabling thousands of housewives, women, typically at the middle end, kind of giving them entrepreneurship and giving them new opportunities, right? So that's a very innovative way of taking that same e-commerce model and applying it slightly differently and kind of enabling financial inclusion, right? So this is what innovation that's happening. In China, you saw Pinduoduo. It's one of the largest social e-commerce platforms in China, where essentially what they do is people can kind of come together. They decide that they want to buy a particular product. They all one person has to be supposed to be take the deal lead, and he has to identify 20 buyers for the product, and collectively as a group they then negotiate the group purchase, and the prices come down from say like $100 to $50 or even $20. So these kind of innovative social commerce models which are coming, they are very geography specific, and these are the kind of innovations that we are seeing compared to the developed countries, right? So this is exactly what is happening. A very hyper localized approach, figuring out what that unique approach is which is working within your country. If anyone says that because Amazon and Flipkart are the largest players in e-commerce, no one else will survive in the e-commerce space, you have these upcoming companies which are proving people wrong. And if you come up with newer business models, even with the existing e-commerce space, you come up with newer business models and with newer technologies, the potentials, you can still create something completely new, because the business model essentially is something completely different. Even you take it one step further into the fintech space. In the fintech space, India's biggest problem is in terms of account receivable, right? What tends to happen is the channel partners don't tend to pay the suppliers on time. It would normally extend by 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, sometimes even maybe more. there are some innovative fintech companies. Basically, what they are doing is they are ensuring that you can get the delivery done within the first month itself through a process called invoice discounting, and they've completely digitized that, and they've made it extremely easy for everyone to kind of participate in that. So these are the kind of localized innovations. You need to identify the right spot, identify the right problem, and how big the problem is. And once you fix that, the amount of revenue that you can get, the sky is literally the limit in terms of what the right opportunity is.
Yes, yes, yes. Actually, the opportunities and the problems are different. Hence, and the sector remains the same as Karthik and Harsh rightly said. Thank you so much for sharing that. Kingsley, over to you with the same question. So, key sectors which are focused in developing nations and
Yes,
the
thank you
trends.
very much, Sonny. Fortunately and unfortunately, I was privileged to be locked down in Nigeria for 4 months during the pandemic, and I saw a lot of opportunities in Nigeria. I'm going to use that as an example. You have the healthcare sector that can be revamped. You have the payment sector that a lot of people are going into right now. Because when you look at Nigeria, for example, they have a population of over 200 million people. That is a large population. And 70% of that population are young, educated people. So that is the opposite of Japan. So when I came to
Yeah,
Japan almost 30 years ago, it was growing in different things. You have recycling just started, this just started, that just started. Now I believe developing countries are in that stage right now because the younger generation are hungry. They are educated, they are hungry to start something, unlike before. So you have a lot of payment system coming out of Nigeria right now. You have Kudi, you have Pishak, you have all of them coming out with different ideas. You have a lot of healthcare innovations coming out because the healthcare sector has been lacking very much in Africa. But thanks to the pandemic, they are waking up because the top people can no longer go to America or go to London to take care of themselves. So they have to invest in the home health tech so that they can go there. So health tech is a place you have to go. Commercial real estate is very important because you have a growing economy. You have a lot of young people who are going to be getting married, having children. They need a place to live. But at the same time, we need government to be able to collaborate with the younger people who are doing this startup. We need infrastructures. We need
yeah,
good internet service. Because, for example, I was there, my internet service was not very good. I had to go for a higher internet service through a friend of mine so that my son could do his education online
yeah,
from Japan. So there's a lot of things that are in developed countries that can be replicated in developing countries.
right.
You don't need to think too much. Okay, this is already happening in Japan. It's happening in Singapore. It's happening in America and UK. Why can't I do the same in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Peru, in any other developing Asia country, the same way they did it over there? So you are replicating. You don't need to think much. So the opportunity in developing countries is very huge, but you need the government to set up the infrastructure. I do agree with Adrian that Dubai built something on nothing. But this was not the people. It was because the government gave them the opportunity to do it. If the government does not give you the infrastructure, if the government does not give you support, if the government does not give you what it takes to make it, you're going to fail. And you also need security. So these are areas that the government has to play a very important role. Nobody will invest in an economy that is suffering from security or that does not have internet, or does not have constant power. So
Yeah,
another area I'm actually investing in Nigeria is waste to power energy, right? You have to give them power. You're solving two problems. You clean the streets of the debris and providing power, electricity for them. These are ways. There are a lot of things we can do to impact the economy, the community, and at the same time, we are helping them to realize that this thing can be done. But when you go there to impose an idea on them, then you are making
yeah,
a problem. You have to be able to work with them. You know, a lot of people are going there. Okay, we're going to start a company in Africa, for example, and then you start a company in Africa. I don't have a problem with you bringing three, four, five staff who are going to teach the indigenous, but you bring all the staff from your country and you don't hire people from that community. It's going to fail. because they will feel you. So inclusive. They have to. It has to be inclusive in whatever you do. Include the community in what you are doing, and you will succeed. And I mean, Africa is huge. Nigeria is huge. South America, they are huge. Southeast Asia, there's a lot of opportunities there that we can actually invest in. Healthcare, edutech, internet, simple internet, waste to power, security. It's just commercial real estate. So the opportunities are just, they are numerous. But how do you go into this without the government support? How do you go into this without security? So Dubai provided a stable environment for people to invest. That is why they invested. So if these countries can provide stable environment for people to invest, people will be willing to go back to the countries, especially those of us outside to go back, and we will be ready to bring investors in because when they come there, they are secured. They know they're going to get their money out. It's simple thing to do. So I believe there's a lot of opportunities in Nigeria, for example, because I was there and I see that the young generation, they are hungry. I believe same with other African countries and Asia, Southeast Asia countries. We just have to try. We cannot leave them there to be like that.
Great. I think these are very practical sort of issues that Kingsley has addressed here. Is obviously we need the government support. We need the infrastructure, internet, basic internet, security. These are all basic before we can obviously, sort of invest or scale our startup in developing nations. Very, very, very good practical points there, Kingsley. Thank you for sharing. Adrian, over to you, please. Next.
I see two big opportunities in the developing countries. First, even in building the infrastructure, which is missing, because the government can do a lot of stuff, but most of the other things are done by entrepreneurs. And in a developing country, when basically so many things are not there, it's a low-hanging fruit for entrepreneurs to start building that infrastructure, even in cooperation with the governments, because there are so many companies having, I'm talking about real, let's say, contracts with the governments to build something. This is one thing. And the second one is there are many industries working in an old school way. And sooner or later, these industries will suffer a lot. And startups can knock on the doors of these companies and offer their services, offer help with digital transformation, with technology, because, of course, we are speaking about technology here. And every company, at least at a certain level, is or will be a technological company, because without technology you can't do anything. But there are so many dinosaurs where the bright minds of entrepreneurs, startups, just people with ideas, because these companies, they have funds, they can pay in advance startups to develop something. And this is a huge opportunity which sometimes is overlooked because we are always looking for the next shiny big thing. And sometimes the opportunity is right in your court, but you need to see it. And one advice, because we all learn from people who are more advanced than us. This is the way we should learn, not from people preaching theory, but from people who are doing what we want to achieve and able to share. And I advise any startup founder from it doesn't matter where they are located. If they look only at VCTV over a certain period of time, it's not an endorsement, it's a pure thing. Their mind will freeze for so many things because they will see so many people who are in the top of their leagues, but slowly they will get new ideas and their mind will be able to cope with the fact that there is something else beyond the limitations they are having at that moment. But of course, they need to be persistent, watch and learn.
Right. Yeah, of course, it's about learning. And obviously, VCTV is that platform which brings them together to guys like you. Thank you so much, Adrian, for sharing that. Another
Adding
important
on Adrian, quickly, 10 years ago, what India faced and today what Saudi faces is a learning that we missed. While the Silicon Valley grew its entire startup ecosystem in the 90s, the same learnings of the mistakes that the businesses made and the that to pushed in had to go through. If that was replicated and transferred by the VCs into these developing ecosystems, the growth would have been much faster. The dollar bleed that all the VCs have had, India has lost upwards of $17 billion in VC funding in the last 15 years through projects that have gone bust. Those dollars could have been saved had we not gone through the same learning curve or had we accelerated the learning curve. So transfer of knowledge, transfer of information, and curation of the VC ecosystem is what a VC's responsibility is also towards a developing economy.
Great sort of addition to what others have shared, Karthik. So I just wanted to highlight one point is that despite the progress across many areas of gender equality, I'm just talking about Asia Pacific, like Asia. Gender gaps in the world of work remain stubborn, as we see. Karthik, Valdana is not here today. So the Asia Pacific is the only global region with a declining female labor force participation. COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated these inequalities with increasing evidence that women's work has been more negatively affected than that of men in terms of job losses, as well as the rise in unpaid care work. So how do the VCs see this as an opportunity to tap into this market for women, for inclusion? We're going to start with Karthik or
So while I notice this trend, I hear about it. I haven't personally come across this trend, but I completely understand where you're coming from. There are now so many sessions and forums where inclusion of women in VC businesses, inclusion of women in startups, inclusion of women in government sectors, etc. So I think there's a lot that's happening. But at the end of the day, we are talking about a meritocracy of an idea. If an idea, if a process, if a thought, if a if business acumen, and if an entire functionality has a merit, despite a gender gap or despite any gender biases, they're likely to get that kind of a window and they're likely to get that kind of an opportunity. However, there are a lot of social startups in this ecosystem, primarily building women's education, primarily working on women empowerment, especially employing women in warehousing technologies and fulfillment functions, empowering women in ground level connect with social ecosystems in urban and rural centers. But I haven't come across any. So while I'm a firm believer in meritocracy of an idea, I do not believe in reservations either ways. I believe it's a good idea, good thought, good project, good business acumen and multiplier or a cause is what wins funds, and it's not a gender or a region or color of the skin that wins fund.
Sure. Thank you for sharing your viewpoint and insights. Jompalo, what's your thoughts about that? What do you see? What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's a very complex question that takes into account different factors in an area of the world which is so important for the global economy, like Southeast Asia. And obviously, you got the figures. Well, I can only respond with an example with what I am personally doing. I have just launched a technology online amalgamator here in Europe, and it is primarily open for women business owners. So, I mean, my humble contribution to try and equalize the situation and giving access to women who own businesses the same possibilities that mainstream operators who are unfortunately males have. I think it's the best answer that an individual can give in my position, to just make a little effort so that we can hopefully in a few years correct the imbalances and indirectly then address your question, because I think the reduction of women into the workforce can be corrected by showing women that actually they can make it. And I think that's the best, leading by example is the best it's the best suggestion that we can offer. It's not theoretical, it's pragmatic, and it can be verified in real life. So I think every one of us has to interrogated himself or herself of what can be done. I, as a VC, I said, okay, one thing I could do is definitely to open up, the gates so that I can assist and accommodate, more than the fair average in terms of the percentage of women business owners that I'm doing. That's my own individual approach to this. And of course, the amalgamator is open to business owners in technology from all over the world, not only Europe, so including Southeast Asia, including but not limited to Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Gianpaolo, for sharing your viewpoint on this. Harsh, what's your viewpoint on this?
Got it. So I pretty much agree with Karthik on this as well, right? The focus thing as VCs and connecting investors for us, the primary focus is in terms of ensuring that we provide returns to the investors, right? So whenever we get a pitch, it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman, we give it equal credence, and the focus is always in terms of the credibility of the idea and the execution, right? That's not like any favoritism that's done towards men or a favoritism that's done towards women. I have had plenty of experiences working with some very inspiring female founders as well, doing some great work. So on that front, it's never been really on that front. It's always been meritocratic. But the point which you mentioned, that the COVID has been really negative, in terms of women side, I find it a bit surprising, because interestingly, what I have been seeing is women, especially since the second half of last year, they've been coming back into the workforce with much more aggression and with much more gusto. Because what is happening is, since men are also have been losing their job, and it's been difficult to sustain the families, so it's kind of becoming like a dual earning, and women have also started coming into the workforce and really starting to contribute in terms of dividing the family expenses. That is, so I'm actually beginning to question the premise of the question itself, because I've actually seen women getting more work these days.
Wow,
that was a smart googly from Sunny. In the middle of a startup debate, she threw a fast one at us.
Just see my chat. Just see the chat. I just sent something.
I knew this would have come only from one Dinda, man. No doubt about it. Woman entrepreneur. Doesn't she want only women participants on the panel? Has she never asked you for all women panel? And then you sneak me in as an ambush marketing. Use one of those panels.
All right, we still have a few more minutes, and we have Kingsley and Adrian to share their views. Kingsley, over to you, please.
Yes, Sonny, that's a very important question. And it's International Women's Month. And women are playing a very big role in our economy today. I think the mindset is changing. The mindset of our fathers and our grandfathers and the mindset that we have right now is very different. Blockchain does not discriminate. Blockchain has come to put everybody in equal. It doesn't matter whether you are black, you are white, you are yellow, you are a woman, you are a man, you are whatever. If it's blockchain, if it's technology, if it's a blockchain project, we are all the same. As long as you have a project that is sellable, they don't look at your sex, they don't look at your color. So it is the only thing that I have seen in the past years that have brought every community, whether you are in the tech sector, you are in the finance sector, you are a woman, you are from Africa, you are from America, you can work together. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for women to grow. There's a lot of opportunity for people of color to grow, and there's a lot of opportunity for white people to grow. So it's not about that anymore. The blockchain community is a community that unites everything. It's like the Gen Zs, like my son would say. Like my son I'm a Gen Z. I don't care where you are from. I don't care your sex. I don't care about anything. So I think we are growing in that sense, and hopefully in the next few years we'll see more women in great positions. They're already coming up. We already have prime ministers as women, presidents as women, head of the dinosaur is there, Tony is there, Sonny, you are there. So there's a lot of women coming up. So I don't think we need to fear that. We need to embrace it.
Thank you so much, Kingsley. I think it's the blockchain technology is going to balance out the inequality if it does exist. Thank you so much, Kingsley. Adrian, over to you. So we're talking about
I see more
about developing. Sorry, just to give you a little bit of context, we are talking about startups and developing economies, and then again we zero down into this female community, women businesses. So what's your take?
Yes, I paid very close attention, and I'm in a family where I have three daughters, so I'm surrounded by a lot of feminine energy, you know. And for women, there are so many initiatives these days. Even there are venture funds focused on startups created by women. And one thing I see as being very important for women, which by the way are more organized than men, sometimes are more serious than men, are more dedicated than men in, and they are more disciplined than men. Don't. My advice is not to wait to be rescued, to search for the solutions to advance, because there are so many, as said, initiatives, so many projects, even educational programs for entrepreneurship funded by governments, which are focused 100% on them. But they need to search for these resources, not to expect these resources to reach them, because it may never happen. In everything we are doing, it doesn't matter if we are men, women, from developed or undeveloped countries, white, yellow, or black. We have two possibilities. One of them is to be proactive and to strive to grow, to hustle. Another thing to stay and complain, to say we don't have anything. You know, we need to be on the first team, and I advise all women to follow this strategy, to be proactive, and they will find those resources which are there for them.
Perfect. I think there's a lot of advice and a lot of, I think, positivity coming out in terms of inclusion and equality. So okay, Karthik, you are going to leave, I guess, soon. I just got a message. So any closing remarks before you drop off?
So yeah, I have a very simple note. I've been a very keen observer and a participant in startup economies in developing countries, and I believe it's all about the VC's mindset to curate, build, and support startups bottom of the pyramid and try and create an infrastructure that creates inclusion. It's not always about startups, because at times startups do not even understand how to go out and reach out to a VCs. I've seen a lot of startups with beautiful ideas, amazing thoughts, but they do not have the exposure. So it's about the VCs to create a very well built and sustainable ecosystem that curates and builds startups. More importantly, I think the infrastructure and the economic hurdles and investment hurdles need to come up. But I think there's a lot of potential. The kind of investments we've seen in Far East and the investments we've seen in subcontinent grow, I think there's a lot of potential for all of us to grow in there. And I'm a very keen investor and a very firm investor in Far East and Southeast. And I would be happy to support anybody who would want to go there.
Perfect. So entrepreneurs and founders, you just heard it from Karthik Bhatt. He's looking to invest in Far East. So yeah, thank you so much, Karthik. So I just want to ask Gianpaolo and others who are here for another 5 minutes, how can these startups and entrepreneurs from emerging markets and developing economies shake hands with the developed economy or the more matured sort of ecosystem? Gianpaolo?
Well, I mean, networking is the key. And as I say, today we have a plethora of instruments that are available. Obviously, if somebody has been in already as a startupper in previous business experiences or job experiences as either a manager or an entrepreneur in other ventures or in other companies, he or she has an advantage because he or she can count on an existing network to build upon. But I think even somebody starting from absolute zero and greenfield, today with the platforms that exist that are accessible at very minimal or no cost at all, I mean, can begin and develop relationships and, as I say, cross the bridge and try to shake hand with potential counterparts on the other side of the world. Of course, it takes time to develop long-lasting relationships. It's very easy to create, sudden burst of contacts. It is more complicated to build on those for the long term, because you have to have an alignment of values, you have to have a clear philosophy, and you also have to be respectful and honest with each other. But it is very doable. It's being done every day, and in the millions and millions of examples. So I think this is.
Hello? We lost you. I can't hear you, Gianpaolo. Okay. Harsh, over to you. So, Gianpaolo, are you there? We can't hear you. Is it me?
Thank you
We
very
can't hear
much
him either.
for the chance of being here
Oh,
today. And you can reach me via LinkedIn or on gianpaoloparigi1@gmail.com if you want. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Harsh, over to you, please. Collaboration. How can these entrepreneurs collaborate with a more mature ecosystem?
So definitely there are certain sectors, especially like SaaS, enterprise tech, and these sectors. These cut across the board, right? Over there, there's plenty of opportunity to collaborate with Western partners. In fact, I'm personally helping two startups expand into the US market by customizing the features according to the right US market and kind of taking it over there, right? So that is obviously one sector where we can easily expand into the developed ecosystems and compete with them on a level playing field. But for most of the other startups who are operating in the Indian local hyper-local system, there's plenty of opportunity to build a unicorn within India itself, right? So you need to identify the local thing which makes special and which you can apply to you, make it extremely hyper-local, considering the Indian sensitivity of whichever country that you are in, understanding local sensitivities and create a product which is solving a real need and it's addressing a big enough need. If you can do that, you can create a unicorn staying within your country itself. Once you can do that, you can always expand because then you have enough money to kind of customize it depending on each and every country's specific requirements. But even staying within your local system, there should be plenty of opportunity over there itself. So as Kingsley was mentioning, right, Africa is a huge continent by itself. You don't really need to go anywhere outside Africa. Just focus on Africa, and that should still be a big enough opportunity. So primarily, that is how a startup founder should look at. And if anyone wants to reach me, they can reach me on LinkedIn. And again, glad to be on this amazing panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Harsh. Kingsley, do you think startups who are doing well or earn the sort of maybe the growth stage in Africa should be looking to go global outside of Africa, or they should be happy with what they have within the continent? What are your thoughts about it?
We have every resources with what we want in Africa. We have the population, a very young, educated population that have ideas. What they need to do is have self-confidence. Now, there is no bad project. I always say this. What they need to do is reach out to somebody who is more intelligent or versatile in the area of the project they have. It becomes our duty to restructure, to help them make that project better. Probably marry their project with another project. Let's say their tech is good, or for example, their marketing is good, their HRO is good. So we bring these three companies together, we marry them as long as they are willing to collaborate. Through this blockchain allows all to collaborate. So there's a lot of opportunities in Africa, a very huge opportunity, whether it's healthcare, whether it's agri-tech, whether it's ed-tech. But the truth is, we can collaborate with them to make it better. So they should reach out to us if they are willing to. They can, because they need the expertise that we have gained in developed countries to develop. So I am willing to help anybody that is willing to reach out and say, okay, Kingsley, I have this project. What can I do with it? I will look into it. They can reach me at LinkedIn or reach at kingsley@kingsleykobayashi.com. Thank you, Sonny, for having me again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Before you go, Kingsley, Adrian, would you like to share something before we wrap up the show?
First, when you want to contact anybody, because you can contact anybody these days over LinkedIn or using other social media sites, think first what kind of value you can put first on the table to open the conversation. So don't be a hungry person, just want it to take. Focus on giving without asking for anything in return. This is an opener for any conversation. And from that, look for what is missing to find the right people to work with and to bring that project to fruition. And don't be shy. Doesn't matter if you are extrovert or introvert. It would be harder if you are introvert, but go out online, search for anybody, get in touch, put something on the table, even do something for free, help that person, and you will succeed slowly by doing.
Great points from both you, Adrian and Kingsley. Any last closing remarks before we wrap up the show? And thanks for staying back a little longer than usual. Adrian, last thoughts. Kingsley.
I will repeat a little bit from what I've said before. So most of the limitations are between your ears, So you need to work on them. You need to watch online what the people who are more advanced than you in what you want to achieve are saying, are doing, learn from them, emulate, and slowly, you will be able to overcome these limitations. It takes time, it takes effort, but don't binge on TV. Instead of TV, use this type of TV because it will pay huge dividends in Bitcoin if you want, or I don't know, any other currency.
So binge on VCTV. Binge on VCTV. That's what Adrian is trying to say.
Exactly. Binge on VCTV.
Thank you. Kingsley.
Yeah, Sonny, I like being on your show, and Idra, it's nice to meet you. Although I'm a very shy guy, I'm shy.
Nice meeting you.
I'm shy by nature. You can see that. But what puts me off people contacting me on LinkedIn is they ask me, "What do you do?" You just look at my LinkedIn profile. You put my name on the internet. You know what I do, and then you ask me, "What do you do?" The way your approach, your first approach matters a lot.
Yeah.
Like Adrian said, how do you approach a situation? How do you start a conversation? Most people can say, "Hey, where you from?" It depends on how you ask it. So if you are going to tell me about your project, politely, as I would do to you, start a conversation that will make me want to listen to you. Now, I also don't like people who say, "Hey, I am trying to help you." You are not trying to help me. You are bringing a project for me to structure for you. We can work together. We can collaborate. We are not actually helping, or we collaborate to make money. The aim of doing business together is to become better in what we do. So my aim is to marry business projects from, let's say, Romania and Czech and Bulgaria together, and because they're very close to each other. If I am right, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, they're very close together. What project can you do together? If, for example, Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, what project can they do together? Queries, this and that. There's a lot of things we can do together, but we have to be open-minded. Your approach matters a lot. So think about your approach to a situation, how you present yourself, how you present your project, how you talk about your project, it's very important. That is the most important part of you gotta be charming, right? You gotta be charming. You gotta be, you market yourself. So if you don't know how to market yourself, you cannot market your project. So it's very simple.
Very, very important point. Approach, especially when approaching investors, is very, very important. And Kingsley just slightly nailed it down in a very nice way. Thank you so much. When you're approaching any investors, do your homework and be polite. Thank you so much, Kingsley and Adrian, for making this panel very engaging and staying back a little more. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to catch up with you on another panel, I'm sure, on VCTV. Till then, keep watching.
Anytime for you guys.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll catch up with you tomorrow if you're the one doing it. I'll be there tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Kingsley. Thank you. Take care. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.